I mean, there's a lot more going on here than collecting crystals and going to a couple yoga classes. That's just how it ropes you in, okay? That's just how it ropes you in. Thinking about the aliens and the astrology and the tarot cards, and it's all just fun and exciting, and then bam! That's how it gets you. Hi, this is Andrea Schulman again. I create law of attraction content both on the platform that you are watching and on my website, raiseyourvibrationtoday.com. Today's video is inspired by one of my YouTube viewers. Beauty Roses wrote into me with a question about why your spiritual awakening is so draining. And that question really spoke to me because yes, your spiritual awakening can be very draining, can be very challenging. And so in today's video, we are going to talk about 3 challenges your spiritual awakening has in store for you. Maybe you've already gone through 1 or 2 or maybe even all 3 of these. And if not, hold on to your hat. It's all right though. We're going to get through them. We're going to get through them. You're going to be fine. I promise you, you'll be fine. Now, if you're excited to watch today's video, please give it a thumbs up right now. And let's go ahead and jump on into the video. The idea of a spiritual awakening or a spiritual journey sounds so romantic, doesn't it? It's like a journey to some remote paradise island kind of idea. But in reality, your spiritual journey is a challenge and does provide challenges for you. And it does help to be a bit prepared for them. Challenge number 1 that your spiritual awakening has in store for you is isolation. Isolation. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. As you become more interested in spirituality and consciousness and becoming more aware, becoming more awake, becoming more conscious, it is very likely that you are going to find yourself separated somehow. A lot of times this comes in the form of losing friendships. Sometimes this comes in the form of suddenly being transported to a new place. You know, so suddenly losing everything that you have and ending up somewhere else. Sounds a little scary, doesn't it? Well, at least it sounds challenging, right? But it is something that most of us along our spiritual awakening are going to experience at least at one time or another. There's going to be at least a period of isolation. Now, this occurs largely because your thinking starts to change. You start to view reality differently and you start to think differently about it. And whenever we change what we think, whenever we change how we think, we alter reality, because reality is just a projection of your thoughts and consciousness. And so as you're going along a spiritual awakening, your mind starts to open and you start to look at the world differently and reality will change. And one of the ways that it will change very dramatically for you is that things that are no longer in alignment with your new way of looking at the world will fall away. So it is very common to perhaps lose a friend or lose a friendship group, lose a partner, lose a job, lose a location. It's very common for something like that to happen because the reality that you had is no longer in alignment, is no longer congruent with the way that you are thinking. And something else that can exacerbate this has a lot to do with authenticity. As we start to change and open our mind about consciousness, as we start to see the world differently, something that's very common, this doesn't happen with everybody, but I know it happened with me and I've seen it happen to other people, is that it can be uncomfortable to talk about this with the people that you know. Okay, so you may radically change your mind about what all of this means, what reality is, what's really going on, what's behind the veil. And that may be something that's very interesting to you. It may be something that you spend a lot of time thinking about or reading about or watching videos on. But if it's new to you and the people around you are unaware of those concepts, there can be a tendency to keep that in and to not speak freely about it. And when we don't come at relationships or come at our environment in a place of being very open, we will end up separating ourselves from it. And in fact, that right there is precisely why I started doing this YouTube channel. I had been blogging and I had been working in the field of the law of attraction and consciousness, but I still found that it was hard for me to talk about this stuff in conversation. And so one way of just obliterating that for myself was starting this channel so I could speak very freely about it and just let that information flow rather than keeping it to myself. So the isolation aspect of your spiritual awakening can be challenging, can be hard, but what it's really teaching you, the positive side of it, is that it's really teaching you authenticity. It's really teaching you to step into and to live who you really are now, rather than who you used to be, which before your spiritual awakening was really covered up in a lot of programming and a lot of structures that had a lot of nothing to do with you. And so while isolation can be challenging, it's really teaching you, it's kind of putting a cocoon around you so that you can become comfortable in this new awareness, so that when you break out of that cocoon, you're really in a place of authenticity where the awake, aware part of you is able to speak freely, is able to be his or herself, and who is able to live from a state of being aware and awake to who they really are, rather than kind of hiding behind the shell that was covering you up before you started going through this awakening process. Hey, if you are enjoying today's video, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. I create law of attraction inspired videos like this one every single week, and I'd really love it if you came along for the ride. So the second one, yikes. Again, get ready for this, guys, if you're new. The second challenge that your spiritual awakening has in store for you is that it is going to force you, and I mean this literally, it is going to force you to confront your fears. The more awake you become, the more aware you become, the more conscious you become, the easier it is for you to understand what's going on, and the easier it is for you to kind of see through the illusion. Okay, and so the illusion is really just all of these beliefs and patterns that we have stored up that are creating this paradigm out in front of us. But when you're conscious, when you're fully conscious, when you're fully aware, you can kind of understand that this is all just a bunch of nonsense. Okay, it's a nonsense of the mind. And the more aware you become of this, the harder and harder it is to ignore destructive patterns and fear-based programming that you're holding on to. The way I experience this is that if there is a fear or a limitation that I've been holding on to, it just keeps coming back. You'll just keep repeating that pattern until you face the fear and alter it, until you face the fear and clear it. It's kind of like how somebody may be in a series of abusive relationships, or may have a pattern of, destructive friendships, or may have a pattern of having problems with money. The more awake you become, the more conscious you become, the more you become aware of the fact that it's your fear creating that problem for you. And until you face that fear, it's just going to keep whacking you in the face over and over and over again. And so part of becoming awake, part of this spiritual journey for us, is learning how to face those fears and clear them. So yeah, I mean, literally every little thing that is a trigger for you, you're gonna have to face at some point and clear it. You can no longer put your head in the sand with it because it just becomes too obvious. And while this may be kind of daunting, particularly if you are new to your spiritual awakening and maybe you haven't yet faced too many fears, it may seem kind of freakish that you're gonna be called to do that. But the positive side of this is that in doing this, it really starts to condition you. After you start clearing a number of your fears, you start to really internalize the understanding that the fear isn't real, and that everything that you've always been concerned about and always been worried about has been an illusion of the mind. So it doesn't really matter. And I mean that literally, like being worried about being sick, being worried about getting injured, being worried about taxes, being worried about money, being worried about losing a relationship, being worried about death, all illusory. So you are going to be called to face these things, and that may seem scary, and it is scary at first. But as you start to clear and shift your fears, you start to realize that they were all up here. They weren't real. And that's extremely empowering and liberating, and it's going to lead you to a greater state of peace. As we're moving along with this video, if learning more about consciousness and your spirituality is something you're interested in, I do also have a consciousness and reality playlist that you might enjoy. And I'm going to try to remember to put a link to that playlist below in the description. So if you'd like to check out those videos after you're done with this one, make sure to check it out. All right, now the third challenge your spiritual awakening has in store for you. I'd be curious if you've had this one or not yet. If you have, please tell me. I'm very curious how many of my viewers out there have experienced this one. But this one is losing touch with reality. You may have seen, I know I've seen some videos of Jim Carrey that really illustrate this point very clearly, where it's very clear that he just is completely removed from the matrix or from the illusion and is really just kind of speaking as the observer. You're going to get to a point where you see through everything so clearly that it's very clear to you that all of this is essentially an imaginary construct of the mind. And that can make it strange sometimes for you to interact with your reality, because it kind of throws you off. You realize that you're really just talking to yourself. You realize that you're really just speaking through an illusion. It's a dream world and nothing more. You know, if you are creating your reality, you're creating your reality. It isn't anything that's actually tangible. It isn't anything that actually means anything. It's really just a reflection of what's going on up here, and that's it. There's nothing else to it. And that can call into question meaning. It can call into question, what am I doing here? It can call into question a lot of broader concepts that are sometimes challenging for people to wrap their minds around, or that can sometimes create some degree of fear. But I found that the more you kind of get to that place of losing touch with reality, the more it helps you step into an understanding that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so much of the human experience that we have created is about having this belief structure that there's so much meaning to everything, and we got to worry about everything, you got to be scared about everything, and everything seems to be so urgent, so pressing, so anxiety inspiring. But the more you start to lose touch with reality here and there, you start to step more into the awareness that it doesn't matter. And therefore, you can relax. And if you're still not sold on this idea that reality is all in your mind, I'd love to invite you to take my law of attraction test so you can put this idea to the test for yourself and see how it works. I've designed a 5-minute test that you can take that enables you to think about something and then watch it manifest. And to take that test now, go ahead and look below in the description for a link on that. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and have a great day. Bye-bye.